fell through. But he's written several books. They're on my book list. You need to get them. And he's saying this. It sounds like a cry, not of a man, but of a race, a great religious, civilized race who could not understand how God had so cruelly visited the world. Absolutely right. Look at this. Frederick Soddy is one of the greatest scientists, modern scientists. In his book, Interpretation of Radium, right, this physicist says, "Can we not read in these books some justification for the belief that some forgotten race of men attained not only the knowledge that we have so recently won, but also that a power that is not yet ours? I believe that there have been civilizations in the past that were familiar with atomic energy, and that by misusing it, they were totally destroyed." So this is not some crank saying this. In the Ramayana, another sacred book of India, it mentions an iron thunderbolt capable of killing hundreds of thousands of humans. It was also said to be so powerful that it could have destroyed the earth. And these weapons could only be used by, look at this, royal decree. There is even passages where it mentions the fact that the weapon was used as retaliation for the other side using it first. Doesn't that sound familiar? In the Smagargana Sutrahara, it says, there is mention of manned space rockets as well as their means of propulsion. We have radioactive isotopes in Sodom and Gomorrah, where they found the area where they think the Sodom and Gomorrah thing took place. It's rich in radioactive isotopes. And that term, when the angel says to Lot's wife, "Do not turn back, because you'll be turned into a pillar of salt," mistranslation. The translation of the word salt is more like our English word for vapor. You'll be turned into a vapor. You'll be vaporized. Because the wrath of the Lord is coming to this place. Well, they've gone there now and they found nothing but radioactivity all over the place. Our word typhoon for a great, wind or terrible power of destruction actually comes from the word for the devil, typhon, which also means serpent. Hurricane actually means the same thing. Cane meaning serpent, hurry means the shaking of the serpent. So we even use the terms today implying some sort of beast or serpent. The reason is because originally the serpents did have a war on this planet. And that is why the ancient Gaelic people talk about the wars of the gods, where the sons of light, the sons of the serpent, had to fight these beasts, these demonic serpent people, for the knowledge. And how they had to conjure with magic and fight these demonic forces and keep them in abeyance. It's all been in the legends of Ireland. And how eventually those beings, in concert, destroyed the earth. Remember we talked about the fact that Tiamat, the first deluge, was created by the destruction of Tiamat? Do you know that the word disaster, another word we use when we talk about some calamity, actually means no star? Aster and dis without. The word catastrophe, right, actually means destruction of a star. Kata, to be breaking down, kata, to destroy or break down the stars. So when we even talk about a travesty of any kind, we're saying no star or destruction of a star. Because, yeah, it's not some small event when Tiamat, one of the planets in your system that looks like a sun, just explodes 50,000 years ago. I think we're going to remember that, Remember in Star Wars, when Luke Skywalker, after he notices that his parents have been killed, he walks out onto the plains of the desert and he looks up, and in the background, what does Spielberg show in the night sky there, or the day sky? There's two planetoids, two suns, two symbols. They use this a lot in mythologies. Now, you see, what happened was that the ferocity of this battle between the gods had tremendous ferocity and totally is recorded in these legends as being devastating, no matter where you go, all the texts. And remember when we said that after the destruction, or even the first deluge, when these beings came here, they came to a foreign planet, remember. The planet's size may be different. Its ultraviolet rays, the Schumann waves, may be different. They may be in a part of the galactic center that they don't know where they are, the galactic wing. The stars look different. They're really trapped. They have the ability to get off the planet, but they don't know where they are. So originally monuments were created. When they set up Atlantis here, these monuments began to be created for one specific reason. What do you do when you're lost? Right? You need to find a compass, right? Or a map. They're lost in the galaxy. So they started creating what we now know as the Great Earth Circles, these monuments and ancient sites, so that they could find out where they were, because that takes a long time. You're dealing with astrophysics and astronomy. The very looking at the motion of the sun during the year, you know, when they saw the sun, just to find out what the cycle of the sun is would take them a whole year of daily observations. So they built these rocks and stone, these monuments, to map out exactly what the cycles are on this new planet that they're in. That's why there's so many of them. And plus they had plenty of slaves to do it, to haul those rocks, and they had magical powers and spacecrafts to carry them in. So they put these things together. To them it was easy. And then they would have their shamans, what we now know as the priests, their priests, sitting in and making these astronomical calculations for the navigation that was coming for that purpose, to know what area they were in. And that's why a lot of these buildings were built. Some were built before. Now, don't you understand? Somebody will go, okay, but then how come they're still standing? Because now you're saying there's a deluge, right? Well, let's take the pyramid and the Sphinx as a perfect answer to that. Obviously, the pyramid was built after the deluge, but anyone know the latest research on the Sphinx? They were talking about all the water damage that it seems to have had. Yeah, you familiar with that? That's right, because that was what? That was built before. And that's going to go for all the countries. Some are totally ruined and devastated because they were built before, others came afterwards. And that's why these were done, for markings, alignments, to find out where the stars are rising, what constellations, what's going on. It's a simple thing that you would do. Now, it turns out that when the Adamic race was seduced away, one interesting anecdote is that they did not stop wanting servants, the original masters. They went back to the drawing boards for a fourth time. And this time they really thought about what they had done wrong. Why is this always happening to them? Why they can't just have their servants, their slaves, to do what they want on this earth. And they discovered that, look, I think the fundamental problem was we've been crossing our DNA with the humanoids on this planet, right? But there's lots of other creatures on this planet, other fauna. So they start making researches into the other fauna on this planet, screening and checking into their DNA and their blood and all of the rest of it. And to cut a long story short, and they did this without, if you read J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings with educated eyes, you're going to read something amazing in there. They did this with a lot of different animals for different purposes. That's where we get our unicorn, our minotaur, you know, all the centaur creatures coming out of. That's what they were doing. And they were alive right down to even the Middle Ages. But they found that what we call the earth reptile had specifically good DNA for them to cross with. And they did. And they created what we know to be the reptilians. So again, ladies and gentlemen, when you're hearing about the reptilians visited our planet, the reptilians are coming, disinformation or just lack of research. We were not invaded by any reptilians. The reptilians are created on the planet Earth by the visitors. They are not the visitors. They are a group that was created by them later on. And you know the reptile is cold-blooded, right? Have you ever noticed that you can steal the children of a reptile mother right in front of her and she just stares right into space? You've heard the term cold-blooded, right? So when they crossed this, then they had the perfect servant. A being that was very powerful, very strong, and no conscience whatsoever. And these reptilians were their servants for a long, long time. And now some of them did look very reptilian, by the way. This does happen, that when they created this fourth race, some of them would look very, very reptilian in their eyes and their hands. But again, because they were using humanoid DNA, alien DNA, aliens look humanoid, a lot of them look very, very humanoid. In fact, you could be standing beside one today and not know it. The ones who look more reptilian, right, they're gone. They're underground now. Or in fact, they were phased out. Around about the Middle Ages, they were still around. That's where you get all the stuff about the knights and the heroes going to have to fight with some demon knocking on the door and having to fight a dragon or something like that. Yeah, because these characters were still around. Mythologies are full of it. But as the industrial age came up, you can't have these characters walking the streets. So, right, so they phased them out. But the ones that look, and they're still born, some of them, but the humanoid ones, you could be standing right beside them and wouldn't know it unless your intuition tells you there's ways. As psychics and people like that will tell you. And as it says in Clement, and on earth shall be monsters, a generation of dragons of men, and likewise of serpents. From another famous writer. Now let's conclude by looking at the post-Diluvian epoch, see if we can get through a little bit of this. Obviously, we're not 11,000 years ago anymore, are we? We're talking about this in the 21st century. So, if there indeed was a war of the gods, if I'm telling you truth, if the evil came into humankind due to this genetic manipulation, and like I got more to say about that, it's just, you know, we have such a short period of time about all the euphemisms in the Bible and what have you.